Okay, so Sean Kirkpatrick has just released an op-ed on Scientific American debunking basically the whole UFO phenomenon. So let's talk about it. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, let's just get right to it. Here's what I learned as the U.S. government's UFO hunter. Yeah, right. That's how I think of the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick as the UFO hunter. Carl Sagan, he says, popularized the maxim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This advice should not be optional for policymakers. In today's world of misinformation, conspiracy-driven decision-making, and sensationalist-dominated governance, our capacity for rational, evidence-based critical thinking is eroding, with the deleterious consequences for our ability to effectively deal with multiplying challenges of ever-increasing complexity. As director of Arrow, blah, 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 the result of this whirlwind of tall tales, fabrication, and second-hand or third-hand retellings of the same was a social media frenzy and a significant amount of congressional and executive time and energy spent on investigating these so-called claims, as if we didn't have anything better to do. We've got better things to do than investigate the biggest mystery of all time, right? Sure, that's a waste of time. The conspiracist story goes something like this, blah, blah, blah. There's a UFO crash retrieval program. They've been hiding it from us. There's bodies. The CIA was involved, blah, blah, blah. But then he goes on to say, first, no records exist of any president or living DOD or intelligence community leader knowing about this alleged program, nor any congressional committee having such knowledge. This should speak volumes if this case were following typical procedure, because it is inconceivable that a program of such import would not ever have been briefed to the 50 to 100 people at the top of the USG over decades of its existence. Second, this narrative has been simmering for years and is largely an outgrowth of a former program at the DOD's Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, called ATIP, which was heavily influenced by a group of individuals associated with businessman and longtime ufologist Robert Bigelow, founder of Bigelow Aerospace. In 2009, then Senator Harry Reid, and it goes on to talk about the history of ATIP and OSAP and Skinwalker Ranch. And talking about the paranormal research at Skinwalker Ranch. And it goes on basically discrediting the whole thing, saying there's no proof, no whistleblowers have come to Arrow, blah, blah, blah. You know, the usual sort of disinformation that you would expect from the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. And I'm not going to take a lot of time going through his various claims. But I will touch on this one paragraph. Arrow thoroughly investigated these claims as part of its congressionally mandated mission to not only technically evaluate contemporary U.A.P. observations, but also review historical accounts going back to the 1940s. One of my last acts before retiring was to sign Arrow's Historical Record Report Volume 1, which is currently being prepared for delivery to Congress and the public. Oh joy. The report demonstrates that many of the circulating allegations described above derive from inadvertent or unauthorized disclosures of legitimate U.S. programs or related R&D that have nothing to do with ET issues or technology. Some are misrepresentations, some derive from pure unsupported beliefs. In many respects, the narrative is a textbook example of circular reporting, with each person relaying what they heard, but the information often ultimately being sourced to the same small group of individuals. So yeah, nothing to see here, guys. Move along. It's all a bunch of BS coming from a small group of individuals who investigated some paranormal stuff at Skinwalker Ranch. Well, at least Sean Kirkpatrick and I agree on one thing. Our modern age of UFO disclosure did begin at Skinwalker Ranch, so there is that. But about the rest of it, this is about what I have to say about that. I mean, come on. You can't get much better than that, right? Love it. The Pinocchio of Arrow. Yeah, that's awesome. Love it. Brilliant stuff. Here's another great one. This was just so badass. You go, Lou. You go, Lou. It didn't look quite exactly like Lou, but that's still pretty badass. I love it. I love it. This is what Sean Kirkpatrick is fighting against. The UFO, the age of disclosure brought about by Lou Elizondo and now Dave Grush. Love it. Love it. Yeah, you fight on, Sean Kirkpatrick, but it is a losing battle. I mean, you can't beat that. You can't beat that. It's unbeatable. But what are others saying? Well, Danny Silva says Kirkpatrick went supervillain with it, didn't he? He's basically Lex Luthor Joker now. Him and Weinstein with a 1-2 punch. It's okay. These type of critiques are important, and we will only increase if we want the public on board. It's good to face challenges. It forces the subject to be on point. Absolutely, and I agree with that to a certain extent. Dr. Disclosure 89 follows that up with saying, I strongly urge Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, Ross, and the team at News Nation to take notice of Dr. Kirkpatrick's recent statements. It's crucial to challenge his claims by presenting irrefutable evidence of UAPs, including official documents, photographs, and videos. We need to move beyond mere discussion and provide tangible proof to substantiate these phenomena. Absolutely, 100%. I love David Grush, I love Lou, but we need to see a freaking UFO, right? We need to see some bodies. We need to see some real solid evidence to, go against the false narrative put out there by Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick, repeating Carl Sagan's words, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Well, let's give them some extraordinary proof, guys. The proof is out there, and presumably after the skiff, there are certain congresspeople that know the locations of some of these programs. So let's go knock on those doors and get ourselves a UFO, guys. Stephen Greenstreet, of course, is loving all of this. Sean Kirkpatrick, recent head of Pentagon's UFO office, links to my accurate New York Post reporting in a new op-ed on the UFO circus. Yeah, so there you go. Stephen Greenstreet really crowing about this. Thanks, Sean. Others are also feeling vindicated, like Jason Calavito. In an op-ed, Sean Kirkpatrick confirms everything I've said about the origins of the UFO flap and the small group of interconnected believers and others with possibly less than honest intentions, none of whom have firsthand accounts of any of this. So there you go. That's the narrative that is being run by the debunkers and by the control group. We need some solid evidence, some irrefutable evidence to counter that narrative. This is a challenge to those with access to this material to present this material to the American people and the people of the world. But not everybody is buying the BS. Rob Sheridan says, as inconvenient to you and your handlers, unfortunately, facts are facts, as I've pointed out. You seem to have missed a few key points, addressing, of course, the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. 1. Whistleblowers directly involved in these programs approach the IC Inspector General in lieu of your office due to many complaints against how others were treated in respect to their testimony, resulting in a lack of trust and competency and accuracy per original reports submitted. 2. Members of Congress, Senate AC, were directly briefed that in respect to where it was reported that at least many of David Grush's claims were credible and also deemed urgent. 3. David Grush did in fact approach you in your office and never reached out for a follow-up. I'm sure David will be hopping all over this soon. Yeah, and I can't wait to see what Dave has to say about this. 4. Although you collected anecdotal evidence via testimony from individuals, your office half-assed it, taking out fundamental information deemed classified with no active follow-up to this information via field investigations. 5. Your reports and presentations only included cases that were explainable, not the percentile that were high-profile, unexplained to this day. Essentially, your office became a glorified debunking operation with no active investigation involvement or follow-up. You left Arrow to move into a cushy number because you actually didn't want the Arrow position from the outset. Yeah, I don't know if Sean ever actually wanted the Arrow position or not. He has a long history that seems to correlate to what you would expect from somebody in the UFO control group, as well as associations with people that are in the UFO control group. So I suspect, maybe his number was just up, and it was his turn to go out and debunk this stuff. And so they picked him to do that because of his credible scientific background. It's probably not a job that he was champing at the bit to have, but, he's a good soldier for the UFO control group, and he went out and he did it, and he is still doing it. Dr. Kirkpatrick began his career in defense and intelligence-related science and technology immediately out of grad school. We'll just go over the highlighted sections here. His career so far. In 1996, he was offered a National Research Council Fellowship at the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory in D.C. In 97, he was recruited by the Air Force Research Laboratory. In 2003, he was offered a program manager position in the National Reconnaissance Office and converted to CIA in 2005. In 2007, he was assigned as Chief Technology Officer in a joint CIA-DIA program office, where he later became Division Chief as a DIA officer. In 2010, he was asked to serve as the Space Control Portfolio Manager for the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, Space and Intelligence, Office of the Secretary of Defense. In 2012, he returned to the DIA, serving as the Department of Defense's counterpart to the National Intelligence Manager for Science and Technology until 2016. So anyway, it goes on, but there you go, a long history with intelligence, space, and technology. And again, he has also a long association with people like Bobby Ray Inman and various others. And there are actually ex-members of the UFO control group that were serving as an advisory board to Arrow. So he is neck deep in the control group and in the cover-up, and it's not impossible at all. In fact, it's probably likely that he has actually worked on some of these programs himself. Joe Murgia has a great response to Sean Kirkpatrick's op-ed piece. I'm not going to read it all. He says, I laughed when I first heard Kirkpatrick say this, but was happy he exposed his hand. How is the crash retrieval program and related programs hidden? And why is it important to visit the actual location and not rely on paperwork or the honor system? The screen grab below remains one of the best pieces of information I've ever received from a source, and it was part of my Wilson Davis megablog. Various people within the United States government in positions of oversight and who you would think had access to all the U.A.P. programs did not find the U.A.P. crash retrieval program when they looked because they never knew of its existence. I and others in my circle have discussed the topic with them of how one cannot find waived, unacknowledged SAPs that operate outside of Section 119 of Title 10. In fact, a DoD office can create a shell company and then transfer funds to it under an unremarkable commercial defense services contract. Then that shell company turns around and gives a subcontract to a third-party aerospace defense firm that hosts a waived, unacknowledged SAP that operates outside of Section 119 of Title 10. This usually hides, making the audit trail terminate at the shell company, the flow of money going back to the third-party company that's running a waived, unacknowledged SAP where a UAP crash retrieval program is hidden. Of course, I mean, I'm sure Sean didn't even look for this stuff. So, but Joe goes on to say, but now it seems Congress finally realizes visits to these locations is a must. Will they get the same treatment Admiral Wilson received in 1997 and be told the details of the program but refused a tour? Will they be allowed in so they can see and touch a craft? Just like with General Jack Sheehan, who uncovered the program before Wilson. Doubtful on both fronts, but it will be interesting to see how the gatekeepers handle such a visit. Can Burchett, Luna, Muskowitz, Burleson, and AOC bring a camera along when they go? Yeah, so I love that. I think that, it is very exciting to consider the 2024 ahead of us, that now Congress people might actually know the locations of some of these programs and be able to get access to them. Now, will they? I'm as skeptical as Joe is. I think it's highly unlikely that they would be given access to these programs. And if they were given access, when they showed up, everything would be gone. But hey, who knows? Either way, it's time to start knocking on some doors. It's time to pony up with some direct, physical, solid evidence so that we can counter these bogus claims by people like the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick that there's nothing to see here, folks. Because until there is a solid, irrefutable evidence, that people like him are going to have their narratives taken seriously by, unfortunately, a lot of people. Just like with the Ministry of Culture in Peru, when they trotted out those obvious dolls and presented them as the Nazca mummies and say, hey, these are dolls, a lot of people fell for that. There are multiple news articles and news pieces about that. And right now, there's probably more people thinking and buying the disinformation that are seeing the actual information. With the Nazca mummies, fortunately, we do actually have physical, solid evidence that we can point to. But we need something like that for UFOs. We know they've got them. The Congress knows where they are. Let's go and get those things and show them to the American people, along with any biologics or other evidence that can be provided. Now is the time, guys. The gauntlet has been thrown. So pony up with the UFOs, guys. Otherwise, Sean Kirkpatrick wins. So let me know what you think, guys, in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this article, please, this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. Smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Join me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, links are below. Please support the channel by buying some merch in the merch store or by becoming a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Meanwhile, there are plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.